This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
And this will be our last chance to say it.
Trying to free your mind, it is this feeling that has brought you to me.
At last.
No judge in U.S. history has ever told somebody what they can and can't say.
The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government the hell out of the business of speech.
Many of us had to be brought to the brink. A lot of us here have calling
I can only show you the door.
to awaken others.
You're the one that has to walk through it.
Spreading a message.
Something's happening, right?
The world is changing every day.
Civilization is clearly
Time is coming.
at a
Train
tipping
can't be stopped. It's already here.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance. If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
And this will be our last chance to say it.
Trying to free your mind, it is this feeling that has brought you to me.
At last.
No judge in U.S. history has ever told somebody what they can and can't say.
The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government the hell out of the business of speech.
Many of us had to be brought to the brink. A lot of us here have calling
I can only show you the door.
to awaken others.
You're the one that has to walk through it.
Spreading a message.
Something's happening, right?
The world is changing every day.
Civilization is clearly
Time is coming.
at a
Train
tipping
can't be stopped. It's
Right?
already here.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
And this will be our last chance to say it.
Trying to free your mind, it is this feeling that has brought you to me.
At last.
No judge in U.S. history has ever told somebody what they can and can't say.
The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government the hell out of the business of speech.
Many of us had to be brought to the brink. A lot of us here have calling
I can only show you the door.
to awaken others.
You're the one that has to walk through it.
Spreading a message.
Something's happening, right?
The world is changing every day.
Civilization is clearly
Time is coming.
at a
Train
tipping
can't be stopped. It's
Right?
already here.
If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
And this will be our last chance to say it.
Trying to free your mind, it is this feeling that has brought you to me.
At last.
No judge in U.S. history has ever told somebody what they can and can't say.
The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government the hell out of the business of speech.
Many of us had to be brought to the brink. A lot of us here have calling
I can only show you the door.
to wake another.
You're the one that has to walk through it.
Spreading a message.
Something's happening, right?
The world is changing every day.
Civilization is clearly
Time is coming.
at a
Train
tipping
can't be stopped. Momentum is already here.
30 seconds, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the True Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. I'm just letting this stay live for a little bit longer. Let the music play, the intro play, rather. Getting people in here. We're going live in about 30 seconds. 60 seconds. 1 minute. Live on the True Perspective, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
And this will be our last chance to say it.
Trying to free your mind, it is this feeling that has brought you to me.
At last.
No judge in U.S. history has ever told somebody what they can and can't say.
The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government the hell out of the business of speech.
Many of us had to be brought to the brink. A lot of us here have a calling.
I can only show you the door.
To awaken others.
You're the one that has to walk through it.
Spreading a message.
Something's happening, right?
The world is changing every day.
Civilization is clearly
Time is coming.
at a
Train
tipping
can't be stopped. Momentum is
Right?
already here.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for tuning in to the True Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. That's the TRU Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. Thank you. It's been a while. It's been a little bit. Trying to make these a lot more consistent. I got some news on that. Looks like Mondays and possibly Sundays are going to be the consistency of the show every week. I will be releasing that. Stay tuned to the Facebook page on the True Perspective on Facebook for that news to come out. And if you're following, be a follower, like, share, subscribe. Helps out through the algorithm to get this stuff out here. I know there's a bunch of topics that are listed on this one today for episode 56. Pretty much just going to be, in the beginning of this, going to pay more attention to the local politics of Rhode Island, although it does affect the entire country as a whole. As far as basically the concern is the Second Amendment proposals that are being introduced into the economic bill that Governor Dan McKee, and I think it's Lieutenant Matos, if that's the correct name. I'll get the correct name in a second. They're introducing, or Governor Dan McKee, through Governor Dan McKee, introducing there's an assault weapons ban that is being introduced into the economic bill of Rhode Island. Like, it's being inserted into the economic bill so that it's their way of sneaking in some legislation that has nothing to do with economics at all. And that's the big concern. I believe it was... Sorry, here. I'm trying to type at the same time. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got the name right. Sabina Matos. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just getting comfortable here. Sabina Matos is the Lieutenant Governor of Rhode Island. And I think that she had some things to say. I was trying to actually find some video of her talking about this legislation that's trying to be passed through their administration. I'll just put her on screen here. Give me a second. So yeah, this is Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos. I actually don't know too much about her. Didn't even know, maybe to my own ignorance, but I didn't even know that she was the lieutenant governor. I didn't know that. Had no idea. But anyway, this is who she is, and I'm trying to find. I was trying to find a video earlier of her talking about it because I did see like a screenshot. Although it was, I think it was being reported by like WPRI, Lieutenant Governor. I have some talking about. I do have most of the stuff that I need to talk about, but let's see. Governor Dan pushes Sullivan. I think this is the video. That's 34 minutes. We're not going to watch that one. Ron takes us here, man. Blah blah blah. Yeah. So I mean, I pulled up some stuff that is concerning the Second Amendment rights on the assault weapons ban that's being introduced into the economic proposal for Rhode Island. Let's see if I can skim through this. We'll do it together. Oh, so this must be the longer version.
It's great that
That's Governor Damaki.
we're moving so quickly on.
He looks like a turkey. Everyone says he looks like a turkey or something. He looks like something. He doesn't look like someone that upholds the Constitution. That's what he looks like. Doesn't look like anyone that would uphold anything other than, whoever that's funding his campaign, whoever's telling him to do these ridiculous, unconstitutional proposals. These are our lawmakers. Lawmakers. I don't really believe in lawmakers. No one makes the law. The laws are, and these are like these common sense things that these people want to propose and stuff. The common sense is not to use what your rights are given to you in a gross manner. They're so threatened by the Second Amendment that they have to come at law-abiding citizens who aren't the ones that are going on these so-called mass shootings that are designed, that are made up. Not made up as in like they don't happen, made up in the sense that they're orchestrated. What do I mean by orchestrated? Oh, it's going to conspiracy theory, blah, blah, blah. Some of these gun right activists, anti-gun right activists are going to say, well, like, what do you mean by that? Because these kids, some of these mass shootings are introduced due to like medication, mental health, all these things, and I know that these things need to be addressed, but it's not the way by hammering down on law-abiding citizens and saying like, hey, you can't have these certain items, which infringes on your on your constitutional rights and makes you a criminal because they say so. But I did pull up before we. Actually, I'm going to play some of these videos. I'm not going to play that long one. I'm trying to, let's see where she talks because I had it on Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos, this is more so directed at Governor Damaki and his constituents who are supporting this bill. So let's see what she has to say.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us here today for the introduction of this assault weapon ban, which is way overdue here in the state of Rhode Island. I would like to take a moment to thank and acknowledge the general officers. It is so wonderful to be united, all of us, in this issue and show the state of Rhode Island that this is a priority for all of us.
Yeah, paid for unity.
Thank you, Governor McKee, for your willingness to sign the bill as soon as it's ready. And I want to thank the General Assembly, Rep. Knight and Senator Miller, for your leadership, making sure that we are going to introduce the bill early on, and we're going to get it done this year. I have to say that the state of Rhode Island, we have made a lot of progress already. Last year was a year in which we made a lot of progress when it comes to gun violence prevention. But
Really?
we still have to deal with the assault weapon.
No one can tell.
And I want to thank all of the advocates that are here, because you did so much last year to make sure that we make the progress that was done last year. And you continue to be active and continue to be here advocating, regardless of all of the pressure and all of the challenges and all of the pushback that you have been getting. If we have made all this progress, it's thanks to your work. So thank you. But I want to say that this year we're going to get it done. This is the year in which we're going to get the assault weapon ban passed through the General Assembly and signed by the governor. And I'm going to be here working with all of you and with my.
Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, these are people who have paid for security around them with most of the time the same type of so-called assault weapons that they want to ban from law-abiding citizens. These same people that take your tax money that say, "Hey, you're a law-abiding citizen, but I'm the lawmaker. I think that you shouldn't have an assault weapon." The same people that are protected by these same so-called assault weapons. Continue.
Colleagues in government to make that a reality. But there is someone that has been working so hard in this bill, now in his role as Secretary of State, continue to advocate. And I want to bring forward Secretary Greg Amore to speak to you next, because he has been a strong advocate for gun safety here in the state of Rhode Island.
All right, so that right there is Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos, who also is endorsing Governor Dan McKee's proposal. It's really all of their proposals. I'll get to who the constituents are in a moment. But Dan McKee is the governor that's putting this into the proposal of the economic bill for Rhode Island. I think that's what it's called. It's actually, and the bill specifically is H5436. And it's an act relating to criminal offenses, Rhode Island Assault Weapons Ban Act of 2025. I'll show more of that in a moment, but I want people to hear what Dan McKee says. I know I had some other videos pulled up, probably shorter ones, but I want the actual footage that's not edited. So I'm just gonna back this up here, and then I'll play this for you, and we'll get to it. So yeah, so anyone that doesn't know, that's not tuned in or isn't a resident of Rhode Island, or isn't familiar with Rhode Island politics, I highly recommend that you do and should. Who I'm about to put on screen is Dan McKee, Governor Dan McKee.
Thank you, everyone, and it's great that we're moving so quickly on the issue that we're all supporting and talk about today, and thank you to the General Assembly leadership, both the Rep. Knight and as well as Senator Miller, for activating the effort so early in the session, and hopefully we're able to get this done early, and then we move on to the issues that are also very important in terms of the budget. But we're here to highlight the introduction of an assault weapons ban bill that would make Rhode Island the 10th state in the country to take this important, life-saving action.
He said the 10th state in the nation for this so-called assault weapons ban. I believe the rest of those states, I don't know. I don't have them off top. I can pull them up though. All of these states have issued a Supreme Court appeal, and I believe all of them have won, except except Massachusetts, which I think is one of them. That hasn't gone through yet.
And if we're able to be successful in getting this bill passed this session, it must be a team effort. And I'd like to recognize a few members of the team.
Team effort as in, hey, we work for Soros, we work for the WEF, we work for the UN, we work for all of the multi we work for BlackRock, all of those, Bill Gates, all of these people. This is what these people are talking about, this whole so-called team effort. Like, hey, we work for all these people pay for us, despite the fact that the citizens also pay our salary through their tax dollars, but we actually work for these so-called super elitists. And basically this is all trickling down from the UN agenda that they want complete removal of firearms from every citizen. And most of the countries are pretty much in line with that. You got Australia, you got the UK, you got Canada, you got Mexico, South America, you pretty much have most of these other countries that are pretty much almost completely disarmed on the law-abiding citizen side. On the ones that won't use their weapons as being, or their firearms as being, in these so-called mass shootings and in these so-called, going into these areas and just using it indiscriminately against other people, or discriminately, like in churches or something like that. So, and they use this in order to be their ploy for being like, hey, if we take it from the law-abiding citizens, then everybody else that use it criminally won't be able to have it. And it makes no sense. It makes zero sense. Let me just throw this little bit here, is that I believe it was back in like 2015, I think 2015, the CIA was found to have been, or was it the FBI? It was one of those two groups, one of the alphabet groups. They pretty much coincide with each other. They were giving grenades and AKs to the cartels back in like 2015-ish, somewhere around there. And they were caught doing that. Automatics, fully those ones were fully automatic. The law-abiding citizen can only have the semi-automatic. So, and this is our government doing it. This is the U.S. government that's done that. So, and then you see all these legislations we're saying like, oh yeah, we got to make these bans for firearms and all this stuff because the law-abiding citizens are the most threatening. These people are funding these sorts of things. The people that I'm about to put on the screen here. I'm not saying Dan McKee specifically. I'm going to allege the fact that he's behind that. He's definitely working for and being funded by these other organizations that are higher up. And it all comes down, trickling down from the UN. Anyway, that was a little bit of a rant. I'll continue here.
Who are here today and clearly have been champions in their own right in terms of these issues, along with our Lieutenant Governor Matos, Secretary Amore, Attorney General Nerona, as well as Treasurer Diosa. And of course, our two bill sponsors, as I just said, Representative Jason Knight, along with Senator Josh Miller. Thank you for your leadership. Advocates and partners, so many organizations like Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence, Moms Demand Action. Yes, give them all. The Moms Demand Action, the Nonviolence Institute, Rhode Island Coalition Against Domestic Violence, United Way, and many more people that live in our 39 cities and towns that are extremely supportive of this effort. Together, Rhode Island is building on the progress we made last year, and we were able to have the General Assembly pass some strong legislation, and I was able to sign that legislation. In my State of the State address, I made it very clear that this was one of the priorities that I believe.
And he's talking about, so I don't think it was last year. I think it was 2022. He may have had it off a little bit here, but let's see if I have this pulled up. Yes, so in 2022, there was I'll put it on the screen. There was a large capacity magazine ban for Rhode Island specifically. Now, and this has also been going on throughout other states too, such as Massachusetts. Massachusetts has a 10-round magazine limitation. In Rhode Island, that also passed a similar bill. It was, the legislation. It's this one right here. It's probably a long one. Hold on. Yeah, so this was January session 2022 General Assembly. This is what the proposal of what this was. This actually passed. This one has actually passed. And in here, so large capacity magazines. So you typically, some of these, most rifles, most of the modern rifles, like your typical AK or AR or, M4s, I think, have a typical capacity of 30 rounds. I mean, that's what they're meant for. Meant to have those rounds. I mean, and not only that, like you can do like a 100-round drum or a 50-round drum or whatever, and that will, that's just, it's you could just do that with those things. They're meant for it. No big deal, really, actually. But some people think that that's a really big deal. Like that's a bad thing. Because they use all these ridiculous arguments of these so-called mass shootings and all this stuff, and then don't take into the account that there aren't law-abiding citizens that are keen on going to get these things and buy these things and own these so-called, and I hate saying this, I'm just going to say firearms because they're not assault. They haven't even defined the method of assault weapon, but they haven't even defined that correctly, and they can't because a firearm can't assault you. The person with the firearm can assault you. That's the thing, and that's who they're trying to get at. They're trying to get at you. They're trying to say that they're trying to pre-crime, pre-thought, and make these legislations off of that. So in this bill, at the end of it, you can go ahead and read it. If you go on rhodeislandlegislator.gov, and then you just have to look up the bill. It's S2653. I think that'll get you there. It comes up as a PDF. By the way, and I'll show the names that introduced it. So Senators Coyne, Goodwin, Miller, DePalmer, Falag, Quezada, Savani, Ewer, Lawson, and DeMario. I think those are, I don't know if those are all of the people that signed it, but those are definitely introduced by those idiots. Anyway, at the end of this, you have, it explains here, it kind of summarizes what the penalty would be if you're someone that, don't abide by this. This it says this act would, hold on, do I have it on screen? Sorry. This act would make it a felony for an individual to possess any semi-automatic firearm magazine which is capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition. A violation is punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment or a fine of up to $5,000. There are limited exceptions for firearm dealers, law enforcement, and military, of course. Now, limited exceptions for firearm dealers. Now, aren't these law-abiding citizens actually selling these things? So why would they be put into a specific category that they would have limited exceptions? What does that mean? And I'm not coming at the firearm dealers. I mean, firearm dealers are where law-abiding citizens get their, get these sort of things from. So are they trying to, pin firearm dealers against or citizens against firearm dealers? Because I don't know. But of course, they mention that law enforcement and military have these special exceptions because, again, these people who take tax dollars from law-abiding citizens who happen to own firearms and happen to own or have happened to own some of these things, that it's okay for their security. It's okay for their military, because this is how they're thinking, that law enforcement is for them, that military is for them, and all of these these firearms and whatever, that none of these laws apply to their side of the aisle. And that's what that's in these bills, that's basically what they're telling the citizen. In fact, not even basically, that's what exactly they're telling you. And last line here is that this act would take effect upon passage. And yes, this passed the Senate and the House or whatever the floor, the Senate Judiciary. And go ahead and read it. I would recommend that you go ahead and read it. The good news is that this was well, do I have that up? This was appealed, I believe, to I think it was appealed in our court, in Rhode Island court, and it remained. It didn't get appealed. Now it's being appealed in Supreme Court, so which is most likely going to be appealed, which is a good thing. But see, the thing is that this causes these processes, because the Supreme Court know that is unconstitutional. In fact, the court that didn't appeal it in our court violated a constitution. They're violating the Constitution. The law itself, these laws itself, are violations of the Constitution. The Second Amendment should not be infringed. So and I'll pull that right up, just so for everyone to read it, because the Constitution is specifically the law of the land, and it isn't to be infringed upon when there are laws made. So, laws can be made but it has to be within the guidelines of the Constitution. So, when you start restricting and making restrictions and causing restrictions for law-abiding citizens to have the right and the means to protect themselves, to have equal arms against, and people pick that apart when you start saying against government. No, it's not. No one specifically trying to obtain firearms and trying to obtain a ridiculous amount of being able to administer ammunition through it just to be against government. It's not. It is for that reason. It is to defend oneself against, but it isn't to just go against. It isn't just to go and say, "Oh, I'm we have all these firearms. Let's just go against." That doesn't. It's not necessarily what it means. It means that you have the means to protect yourself against these things, these sort of things. At most, it's just to have as it's almost like an insurance policy. It's better to need it and not have it than have it and not need it. I mean, I'm sorry. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. I think I said it right. So yeah, I'm not gonna. And again, don't go by AI when you pull up these things too. Like, just bypass AI. Sometimes AI does have it correct on the, you know, the definitions of certain things, but it gets into things where it's like, oh, these are interpretations, blah 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 blah, and not all of the time that's correct. So I wouldn't even base my entire opinion on just getting the information from AI being like the scapegoat of the information. I would just go right to what the Second Amendment says, or whatever you know, constitutional right that you're looking up, or whatever Bill of Rights that you're looking up. So it says, the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So this is, and these are the things that these lawmakers, so-called lawmakers, hate. They don't like the terms well-regulated militia. They don't like the terms security of a free state and the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And that term right there, shall not be infringed, of the Second Amendment, this is a signed congressional document conducted on the formation of this of the entirety of this country. And then you have laws that, like large capacity magazine bans and so-called assault weapon bans that specifically infringe upon that, because it basically makes in their argument, in their way of thinking, that it limits the ability of the firearm to do what it's supposed to do. Under the guise of whoever that person is that's using that firearm for whatever specific reason. If they're going in to do some type of mass shooting, it so-called limits the capacity of the ability of that individual to do more harm, as opposed from doing a 30-round magazine or 100-round magazine or whatever. But if someone has the intent and someone has the ability to have access to these certain accessories, they're not gonna. They don't care about whatever ban that's up there. They don't care about whatever congressional legislation is up there. They don't care. They have the intent on harming and hurting people. They're going to get these things and use it for whatever means that they want to use it for. And that could be a multitude of anything. I had said something in a comment section not too long ago about, like, what are we going to ban? Are we going to ban cars? Because cars have been used for mass, for hurting people in massive numbers. As of recent, bombs have been used, knives have been used, axes have been used, machetes have been used, and they're used all over, not just in the U.S. And it has been happening in the U.S. It has happened in the U.S. There's been cases where people have used knives that would kill 21 people. You can kill 21 people with a knife. You can kill 21 people with a firearm easily. And so what are we going to do? We're going to start banning kitchen knives. We're going to start banning axes. We're going to start banning cars. Is it going to get to a point where we're going to just start banning people? You know what I mean? Like, where does it end, and where does the common sense begin with any of this stuff? Thank you, everybody, for tuning into The True Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. Craig, Adelaida, Ashley, I see y'all. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, and everybody else that's on all of the other platforms, tuning in on Rumble. Shout outs to y'all on Rumble. Make sure y'all go to Rumble. You can go to YouTube too, but YouTube, definitely shadow bans the hell out of this podcast. Go to Facebook. Facebook, so far so good, but I would recommend that you go to Rumble for these live events. I know I'm going off track here real quick, but I just want to update that, is that in the future, I'm going to be using a different type of platform on here, where I should be able to go on X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and then everything else like Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble should be all at the same time. And I'll update as I go with that. But that should be up in the next few other future podcasts. But yeah, going back to this in Rhode Island, this is what these lawmakers are trying to do. They're trying to use citizens. They're trying to criminalize citizens. In fact, they have been successful with that so far, especially with these large capacity magazine things. Giving a citizen 5 year, threatening them rather with a 5-year prison sentence and $5,000. I mean, what are you doing? What are you doing? Like, how does that make sense? Whereas you have, did we forget in Providence that a few years ago that somehow, some way there were firearms that had gone missing? Let me pull that up. Let's see if I can find that. Let's see if that hasn't been scrubbed off of the internet. Let's see if and this is, by the way, actually, I might be wrong. It might have been under Raimondo, but I know Alorza at the time when he was the mayor of Providence, that was under his watch. But hold on, firearms go missing in Providence. All right. Let me see if I can pull this up. Because I remember that it was like over over 30. I think like over like 30 firearms that had gone missing. I'm on Google right now. And yeah, I believe it was somewhere around when COVID was around. And I remember reading the article. In fact, I think a good friend had even posted it. And I went on a deep dive on it. Oh, that's cool. Providence police officer's personal car and firearm were stolen from his home in Foster. That was in November 18th of 2019, reported by WPRI. I'm just reading. I'm not going to pull that up, but that's not the article that I had seen. Firearms were missing. And then when this happened too, there was like a rash of like a lot of shootings that were going on. And yeah, I don't know. If I do find that up, I will post it. 30 handguns stolen from Rhode Island gun shop. How does that happen? Apparently grabbed after a car smashed through. Oh yeah, all right. But let's pull this up. This was 8 months ago. That's not the one. I don't think that was the one that I was looking at though. Huh. We must have scrubbed it.
And that breaking news is out of Warwick, where we now know 30 handguns are missing from a gun shop, apparently grabbed after a car smashed through the entrance. It all happened very early this morning. NBC 10's Liz Bateson is live outside of the Rhode Island Guns and Ammo on Post Road with what we know. Hey, Liz.
Hey, Barb, it's still an active scene. You can see where the car smashed through the entrance of this building before driving off. Police say no one has been arrested.
I drove in the driveway and it was a shock. And I just my mouth dropped, knowing that it was like, oh my God, what happened?
Caution tape surrounds this plaza on Post Road, which is home to a gun and flower shop.
I feel a little stressed and a little bit scared, honestly. not knowing that they didn't catch anyone yet or knowing that what's going on.
Larry O'Brien owns Smell de Roses next door to Rhode Island Guns and Ammo, a business that is now an active crime scene. Warwick police say a vehicle smashed through the entrance of the gun shop just before 4 this morning, and someone stole 30 handguns before driving away.
I just feel like they're going to get in the wrong hands of somebody. And as a business owner, it just makes me nervous for being in the building.
Police were alerted after an alarm went off. A neighbor who lives a few doors down from the business slept right through it and says it's typically a quiet neighborhood.
I'm not sure how they were able to get in and out before anyone was able to get there. That's usually there's police officers right down the road on either end of Post Road, not even 2 minutes away. So that's pretty fast to get in and out with 30 firearms.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to the owner of a business right across the street that has a security camera pointed at the gun shop, but they tell me, unfortunately, that camera was not hooked up at the time of the crime. Live in Warwick, Liz Bateson, NBC 10 News.
Yeah, that smells like, and I don't know, it doesn't look like there's an update on that. I'm going back to the article over here. Doesn't look like there is. The cameras across the street were off. That's in the. Is that what that was said in the clip? Because the comment is saying that. Yeah, it smells fishy. I think that was the article that scenario was linked to what I had read. It was a few years ago, but this says 8 months ago, so that wouldn't make sense. But I had read something along the lines that Providence police had supposedly or allegedly lost, or these so-called firearms had gone missing. Yeah, I don't know. But those kind of things are pretty concerning too. And here's the thing. That those types of scenarios, obviously those people that crashed into that place to steal 30 handguns, that's the intent of what, I mean, clearly a law-abiding citizen wouldn't do that. And if they did, that just means that they have the intent of being a criminal. Everybody else that has these things aren't going to do those sorts of things. They're just not. They don't have the intent to. The intent that most firearm owners have is either they have a love and passion for, going to gun ranges and practicing how to use their firearms. The majority own because they want to defend and protect their homes and be able to protect themselves and all that stuff, especially during these times. So these so-called lawmakers are actually limiting the capacity of law-abiding citizens to be able to protect themselves effectively. I want to speed through here. I want to hear from Jessica De La Cruz. I believe she's Senate Majority Leader out of North Smithfield, and I've heard about her in the past. I've listened to a lot of things that she said in the past, and she very well researched, very well spoken, very, very direct and calm in her responses to a lot of these types of issues. And I think that she's one of the few that I've seen, and there are others out there. There are other people who are going and striving to be part of these state offices, such as Paul Rihanna Jr., Nayoka Powell. There are many others out there that are trying to make their footprint within Rhode Island and change these things, and not only just change legislation necessarily, but to abide by the specifics of the Constitution. All right, I know some of these candidates are they run on the Republican side. But in my opinion, if I had to say on which side of the aisle that they actually sit on or stand on, is that they're constitutionalists for the most part. And I think that's fair to say. I think that would be pretty accurate on to say to some of these constituents that are trying to make their footprint in these state offices, like Nyoka Powell or like Paul Rihanna Jr. and many others out there that have been running. David Stone is another one. I would say that these people are constitutionalists, not necessarily Republicans, not necessarily, trying to fit in on a certain criteria or party definition. I just think that these people are strict on standing on what the Constitution actually is for and what it means and what it's supposed to be. And yeah, I would look into these individuals because they're very well researched, they're very, very educated, and they do want to make a difference for Rhode Island. They do want to change a lot of the legislations that have brought Rhode Island into a more of a criminal fashion and corrupt fashion. And I think that these types of people that are looking to get into these state offices are capable and very capable of changing these things. But these Dan McKees and these Sabina Matos and all of these others, the attorney generals that are currently in office in Rhode Island, they need to be voted out, and they need to not, and they never need to be voted back in. Those types just need to not be voted back in because clearly they're not for the people and they're working for other means. And that's the uphill battle that we have when we are in a fight for trying to keep everything specific to the Constitution and keep everything specific to the Bill of Rights and keep everything specific to the civil rights of not just Rhode Island, but America altogether. I'm going to play this. This is, I believe, NBC 10 WJAR, and it says that Governor Dan McKee lawmakers urge passage of assault weapons ban in Rhode Island. This is probably similar to the video that we already watched.
The Rhode Island State House we take you because that's where some leaders are calling for a ban to end the sale of assault-style weapons in the state.
It has been tried before and failed. The Night Team's John Perrick spoke with the governor and the Senate Minority Leader. He joins us live tonight with both sides. John?
Patrice and Dan, the governor tells me that after years of multiple failed attempts, he believes that this is finally the year. But the Senate Minority Leader, she tells me that she believes he's acting outside of the law.
A call for a ban on semi-automatic weapons coming from the governor's desk again.
I think this is the year that it'll happen.
Anti-gun violence advocates along with local leaders filing into the State House this evening. Rhode Island Governor Dan McKee proposing a ban to prohibit the sale, manufacturing, and possession of assault-style weapons, such as semi-automatic shotguns, rifles, and pistols.
If this bill passes, what happens to people that already have assault weapons?
So if you have them, you can keep them. You have to register them within a year.
Earlier versions of the bill specified that people who already had the guns must register them with their local police department.
I'm going to back that up just a little bit to where he says that, and we're going to read. Let's see, what is this? Okay, that's the active 20. I can get rid of that. I'm going to pull this up really fast because this is the current bill. You can see this on the screen. This is 2025 H5436, State of Rhode Island and General Assembly, January session, AD 2025. This, and I know this is January, but this is an act that is being introduced pretty soon that is going to be within the Rhode Island Economic Bill or Rhode Island Economic budget. At the end of it, now you could go, again, you can go on to rilegislature.gov and look up H5436, House Bill 5436. Again, that's Rhode Island legislature.gov and look up H5436. That's the bill that's trying to be, that they want to pass. And at the end of this, I'll read it. And it says, This act would establish the Rhode Island Assault Weapons Ban Act of 2025. The act would define various assault weapons and would restrict the manufacture, sale, purchase, and possession of these assault weapons. The act would allow the owner of an assault weapon lawfully possessed on or before the effective date of this act to have 1 year from the effective date of this act to register that weapon and obtain a certificate of possession. This act would take effect. This act would take effective January 1st, 2026. Now, what does it say about specifying? First of all, what they want is a gun registry. That's what this is. It's a gun registry. So they want to monitor and know who exactly has the so-called assault weapons ban. It's already logged it's already logged federally for the most part. And for the most part, it's not. I forgot much of the stipulations on what that even means, but this is why there's serial numbers on these things and so on and so forth. But for the most part, they're not exact. They're not registered to you. Which kind of gives you the freedom on, selling it back to an arms dealer or being able to sell it at a what do they call it? They're like gun meets, and people put a bad name on these things, like they're just like rebel gun meetings and everyone's selling them to all, it's like they make it out to be like some type of black market for firearms and all this stuff. It's 100% lawful to sell your firearm. Everyone that's there has to show an ID, has to write down the ID and all that stuff. There are some loopholes, and I get that how some people could find it to be a little bit on a shady level, but it's not, and you won't find anybody that's criminally there because everyone's there's police that do it. There's police that do these things. So here's the thing. When he just said that you have to register. He basically said you had to register the firearm. Let's go back to what he said. Let's go back to what he said real quick. Well, we're supposed to go back to what he said anyway. I did say that, right?
So if you have them,
to people that already have assault pistols. If this bill passes, what happens to people that already have assault weapons?
So if you have them, you can keep them. You have to register them within a year.
Earlier version.
Yeah, you have to register them. Okay, he did say that. So yeah, he's saying that you have to register them. Now, when you look at this bill, I just saw it. Here it is. I'll read this here. Okay, so part of the bill, I think it's line 32, 1147.2-3, restrictions on manufacture, sale, purchase, and possession of assault weapons. I'm air quoting. No person shall manufacture, sell, offer to sell, transfer, purchase, possess, or have under his or her control an assault weapon, except as otherwise authorized under this section. Any person convicted of violating this subsection shall be punished by imprisonment of not more than 10 years or by a fine up to $10,000, and the assault weapon shall be subject to forfeiture. Subsection of this section shall not apply. A person who, on the effective date of this chapter, lawfully possessed an assault weapon and who, within 1 year of the effective date of this chapter, registered the, you have, so it says, if you, so what this top part just said is that if you do not so-called register this assault weapon, you face a up to 10 years imprisonment or a fine up to $10,000. And they take your firearms. And you'll never have a firearm again. You'll never be able to own one again, rather. Within 1 year of this chapter. So, registers the assault weapon with the police department in the city or town where the person resides. Or, if there is no such police department or the person resides out of state, with the Rhode Island State Police in accordance with the provisions of this chapter. Or, renders the assault weapon permanently inoperable as provided in subsection. So what this is also is a gun buyback program, because now I'm trying to find on if there's a tax here, because when I read through it and I tried to read it. Okay, so here we go. Yeah. So there will be a registration fee of $25 per each person registering one or more assault. So say if you have 6 firearms or 10 firearms or whatever. Say if you're one of those guys or women that are gun enthusiasts and you have a lot. There's nothing wrong about that. You have to register per firearm $25. So, let's say an average number of firearms is, let's say you got 20 of them, right? 20 times what? 25. It's $500. You know what I'm saying? And some people that may not be a lot, but to other people that is a lot. So, I mean, $500 for some firearms, that you could buy a firearm with that. You know what I mean? Now, it says here, each registration statement shall be signed by the registrant, that is you, and its signature shall constitute a representation of the accuracy of the information contained in the registration statement. For an applicant who resides in a municipality with an organized full-time police department, the registration shall take place at the main office of the police department. For all other applicants, the registration shall take place at a Rhode Island State Police barracks. Within 90 days of the effective date of this chapter, the superintendent of the state police shall prepare the registration statement as described in subsection A of this section and a certificate of inoperability as described in 11-47.2-3F, and shall provide a suitable supply of such statements to each organized full-time municipal police department in each state, blah, blah, blah. A certificate of possession shall only authorize the possession of the assault weapon specified in the certificate. Any person in possession of multiple assault weapons on the effective date of this chapter. I love how they just keep calling it assault weapons instead of just firearms. That language right there actually might save a lot of people, because they still have not defined what a assault weapon is. So anyway, any person in the possession of multiple so-called assault weapons on the effective date of this chapter must submit a separate registration statement to obtain a certificate of possession for each of the so-called assault weapons of which they wish to retain possession, provided, however, that only one registration fee of $25 shall be collected pursuant to subsection A3 of this section. And they just keep going on and on and on and on and on with this ridiculous language. So this is what Rhode Island's facing right now. Also, it's being introduced by Representatives Knight, Caldwell, Boylan, Speakman, McEntee, Agello, Kazarian. Whew. That's quite a name. Kazarian. Craven, Dawson, and Felix. date introduced February 12, 2025. Yeah, so it's the 17th today. Referred to House Judiciary, Governor, Secretary of State, General Treasurer, Attorney General, Lieutenant Governor. So, Rhode Island Assault Weapons Ban Act of 2025. These people are fucking psychos. Sorry for the language. I know. But it's dangerous. I mean, this is it's about as dangerous as no-knock warrants. I would argue. Because look, you're specifically putting people. Now they're going to say like, no, because they're giving you the option to go register each firearm. They're giving you the option to keep your firearm. You got to register your firearm. You're putting it on a registry. Some people would say like, well, that's not a big deal. That's not unconstitutional. It is, because what it does is that, first of all, it's making you pay a fee to own the already firearm that you have or future firearms that you have, but it's also restricting people or firearm dealers to not sell these items. So what are they going to sell? These so-called assault weapons. And did they even define specifically? Oh, hold on a second here. The ability to I would just say go read this, because there's quite a bit of language in there that seems to be trying to specify what exactly these assault weapons are. And again, they're saying assault weapon specifically within this bill, which I find that to be quite I think there's a problem with that language, because they still have not been able to define assault weapon. And I don't think they can define the weapon itself cannot assault. It's the person behind that who can assault with the so-called weapon. These are firearms. That's what they are. There's no such thing as an assault weapon. And I don't think they can define it, but they have that specific language in there. I think they messed up with that, which is good on our part. I'm not, but the fact of the matter is that, say that people, and I imagine that people are not going to go and participate in this registry if this goes through, which I hope it doesn't, and I don't think it will. But if it happens to, now you get caught with the so-called assault weapon that's described in whatever, which I don't even see the description of some of these things in there. They're just saying long-barreled, threaded, and all that stuff. That can mean anything. And say that you happen to be found with these so-called assault weapons, and you go through you go through. Now, the thing is, the problem with this is that they're going to throw you into these legal obligations and all that stuff, which a lot of people cannot afford. A lot of people can't take time out of work, or a lot of these people have families, and they're taking care of their families. They don't want any of this lawsuit garbage to go on. So this could cripple a lot of people for these types of things, because of these types of things. And it criminalizes law-abiding citizens who have nothing to do with any of these mass shootings, who have nothing to do with any street gang war or whatever the hell it is, or going around to any of these facilities or any of these places or any of these mosques or churches or temples and shooting these places up. Law-abiding citizens don't do that. They just don't do that. It just doesn't happen. So the fact of the matter is, they're criminalizing you, and they're telling you, look, you have to register this, or you have to get rid of it, or you have to sell it back, and they're making it seem like, oh yeah, you have all these options to it. Doesn't criminalize you, but it criminalizes you. It legitimately criminalizes you. The whole large capacity magazine thing legitimately criminalizes you, with the threat of imprisonment because you don't comply, or whatever that, whatever they deem as definable as non-compliance. It's ridiculous. So I want to go to hear what I'm going to finish the rest of this with Governor Dan McKee talking. I'll back it up just a little bit, and because I want, and the thing is that whoever interviewed Jessica De La Cruz, it doesn't look like they gave her a lot of light to the topic, which is very unfortunate because the news is obviously biased. The news based out of Rhode Island is obviously biased. They don't want a lot of light on these things. But this is the uphill battle that people have been fighting. So I'm going to continue here, end of my rant for a little bit.
Passes. What happens to people that already have assault weapons?
So if you have them, you can keep them. You have to register them within a year.
Earlier versions of the bill specified that people who already had the guns must register them with their local police department. But state law says government firearm registration is prohibited. We reached out to the governor's office for clarification. So then there would still be assault weapons on the street. So how's this a ban?
Well, the ban is on future sales and manufacturing of assault weapons.
This isn't McKee's first crack at banning semi-automatic weapons in the state. But this time around, the governor included the ban in his state budget, set to be announced this week. What's the significance of you putting it in the budget?
Well, I think that it made it very clear. I think that actions speak louder than words.
I'm not sure why he would put it in budget. It's actually not in his purview to do so. He's in the executive branch. He doesn't legislate. He's not a senator or a rep.
Senator Jessica De La Cruz is the Senate Minority Leader. She says she's strongly against McKee's ban on semi-automatic weapons, reiterating that the state does not have a firearm registry.
And that's not constitutional. It's not legal.
We want to just make sure we're protecting Rhode Island.
And now for this bill.
I could tell you right now, they did not want her to say that, and I applaud her for saying that out loud, as it should be said, because this guy, this guy right here, what is this thing here? What is this thing? What is it? What is it? I tell you what, these people are disgusting. And some would say like, oh, there's worse things going on. Yeah, I get that. There are worse things going on. In fact, there's a lot of worse things going on that isn't about the Second Amendment or First Amendment. But I'm telling you right now that if these types of people get control, which is what they want specific control, because in reality, they don't work for you. Now, legally, they do work for you in that sense, but in the reality, they do not work for you. They work for a higher order, and it trickles down all the way from the UN. It trickles down from all of these multi-trillion billionaires, like the World Economic Forum. These are all basically students of this globalist, technocratic industry. It's a massive, massive complex. It's a massive movement towards a global type of, I'm going to butcher this, but it's basically out of a playbook of Alex Jones. It's a massive prison planet plan to oppress every single human being in every nation, to make them poor, defenseless, and starving, and eventually to wipe them all out. I don't want to go too far down in the rabbit hole with that. I've said it in other podcasts. You can go in the past in other podcasts, go into the other episodes. I've talked about stuff like that, and I'm going to go in more depth in future episodes about that. These are these little things, so someone could say like, oh, someone could say, oh, there's more important things going on. Indeed, I agree with you. I'd rather not be distracted by stupid things like this in my own state. But the fact of the matter is, this is the trickling effect, and it's speeding up. It's getting more aggressive. It's speeding up, and these things just cannot be allowed. You can't criminalize people who aren't criminals. That's the thing. And doing these stupid little sneaky lawmaker acts, that's how you make criminals who aren't criminals. but on paper it says you are. On their paper, my paper says the Second Amendment shall not be infringed. That's the supreme law of the land. And these things, these talking heads, these paid for treasonous traitors, they don't follow what the supreme law of the land is. They think that they're above that. They think that they know better. They think that they know better than you do because they view you as a peasant. They view you as, oh, these are just taxpayers. These are just people. They don't mean anything. But this guy and all of his constituents that support him and all the people that support him and all of these ridiculously disgusting laws that these, I mean, look at them. Look at them. Just look. They have to be voted out. They have to be voted out. They have to get, they don't deserve the office or positions that they're in for doing these types of things. I mean, you're criminalizing a majority of the state. That's what you're doing, Dan McKee and Sabina Matos, and who else is also introducing this? Like, because I name them off and call these people, call all these people on all these legislative matters because they and peacefully do it peacefully. No threatening, no more. Don't do any threats because that's, first of all, that's not the way, and you're not going to get your point across when you do that, and just don't do that. It's probably unlawful to do that. But definitely voice your opinion. Be stern about it. If you got to insult them. But I wouldn't recommend doing that. But don't. And I said insult, not a assault. Don't do any of that either. But call them or confront them and ask these important questions and bring up these important issues because these people they're disgusting and they need to be brought. All these things need to be brought attention to their to them because they're coming for you. So it makes sense for you to be coming for them lawfully and peacefully. Today, Governor Dan McKee was joined by Lieutenant Governor Sabina Mato. Okay, so this is talking about that interview. I had it up somewhere. I thought I did. I did think, maybe I didn't. No, I definitely did. So yeah, it's Governor Dan McKee, Lieutenant Governor Sabina Matos, Secretary of State Greg Moore, Attorney General. Put this up on screen. Go back here. Yeah, Sabina Matos, Secretary of State Greg Moore, Attorney General Peter Nerona, Treasurer James Diosa, Representative Jason Knight, Senator Louis DePalmer, Melissa Cardin, Executive Director of RICAGV. I don't know what that is. Something Rhode Island against gun violence. Mia Tretta, volunteer leader with the Brown University Students Demand Action Chapter. And look, so these are all the constituents. I mean, some of them, I guess victims of gun violence have decent arguments, but by criminalizing law-abiding citizens, no. You just have to go harder on those who are actually doing the criminal acts. Like if you actually put legislation towards people who commit or plan on committing or premeditate the commitment of doing these criminal acts, if you go harder on those types, then you'll make significant difference. You're not going to make any significant difference by going against law-abiding citizens. How does that make any sense? And these people cannot and will not make any example to that argument, because they don't have any, because they're idiots, and they go off emotion. They don't, and they're not respecting the supreme law of the land. So I have a little bit more here. Okay, so this is of January 14, 2025. I don't know if she talks about Dan McKee in here, but she does talk about, she talks about Dan McKee, but I don't know if she talks about the legislation. I don't know if it was up here, but I'm going to play because she, like I said, Jessica De La Cruz, Senate Majority Leader, is very well spoken. And look, she's like one of the very few that are talking about these issues, that are in positions to be talking about these things. So I'm going to play and, let y'all pretty much get a little bit to know what she does and what she thinks.
Good evening, Rhode Island. I'm Jessica De La Cruz, and I have the honor of serving as the State Senate Republican leader. More importantly, I'm blessed to be the mother of 3 boys who are the reason I ran for office, to make Rhode Island a place where they will want to raise their own families. Like you, I just heard Governor McKee do his best to paint an optimistic picture of the health of our state. But one thing was abundantly clear. Despite the governor's best of intentions, some of the outcomes under his administration have been abject failures. Unfortunately, the state of our state under Governor McKee has been deeply troubled. In just over a year, many long neglected and avoidable problems have led to critical failures. The Washington Bridge catastrophically failed, adding hours to already miserable traffic jams. And while the gridlock is bad, even worse is the closing of small businesses whose owners have sacrificed weekends, vacations, and holidays to keep the doors open during hard times. Rhode Island's hospitality industry lost $114 million in revenue and 1,300 jobs because the bridge failure. This was avoidable. But how many of those vital businesses are closed forever because of the negligence of our government? Weeks ago, hackers stole Social Security numbers and other personal information from Rhode Island's IT system used for public benefits. This program went massively over budget, with computer errors denying families their health benefits, and has been burdened by crashes, glitches, and lawsuits. And now, over 700,000 people in our state have had their entire lives for sale on the dark web. To add insult to injury, Deloitte, the exact company that was paid hundreds of millions of dollars to build this failed IT system, is now managing its own data breach. That's an insult to the taxpayers checking their credit score every morning because the governor failed to have the necessary cybersecurity measures in place. We should expect our government to do a good job the first time, but at the very least, our tax dollars should never reward failure. Although the governor has yet to release his fiscal 2026 budget proposal, he has already signaled his plans to incorporate the assault weapons ban, a move that is completely out of place in a budget. If the governor wants to push gun control, perhaps he needs a civics lesson. Legislation is crafted and debated by the General Assembly, by senators and representatives, not hidden in the state's budget. He should either run for legislative office or collaborate with lawmakers rather than sidestepping the legislative process and using the budget as a tool for activism. To make matters worse, mismanagement of critical systems highlights the deeper issues plaguing our state. The reckless overspending of taxpayer dollars and the poor management of the money we do spend. Ask yourself, have the billions of dollars paid by you, your family, and your neighbors been used wisely and efficiently? Consider housing. A report by the Rhode Island Public Expenditure Council, RIPEC, found that we spent $273 million to produce just 1,600 new affordable housing units, with subsidies exceeding $160,000 per unit. That is not an efficient use of taxpayer dollars. And education is no better. Rhode Island spends among the highest per pupil in the nation, yet only 30% of our students are proficient in English and math. That means 70% of children in our state cannot meet basic academic standards. And our infrastructure? U.S. News & World Report ranks Rhode Island 47 for bridges, 49 for roads, and dead last for transportation. But ask anyone who's driven in our state, especially across the Washington Bridge, and they would argue that those scores are better than we deserve. These rankings confirm what Rhode Islanders experience every day. Our state is failing to deliver on the basics. But imagine for a moment a different Rhode Island, a state where tax dollars are spent wisely, one that maintains bridges so they don't fail, and sensitive personal information is safeguarded. A proactive government that clears the way to open shelter doors for those in crisis. A government that overcomes climate hysteria and works to lower the cost of electric and heating bills through more sensible energy policies. And I see a state government that focuses on what our families and children need most: good teachers and providing safe and effective schools. When I think about the state of our state, I imagine what it can be: a government committed to accountability and affordability. How do we make Rhode Island the state we all envision? It starts with effectiveness, efficiency, and accountability. We need an independent office of Inspector General. With 70% of Rhode Islanders in support, this bipartisan solution is not a new idea. It would provide independent oversight, ensuring accountability and efficiency in state government. It would investigate, detect, and prevent fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement of public funds. This is a common sense, overdue solution we can act on right now. RIPEC's report stated it best. Rhode Island does not have a revenue problem. It has a spending problem. In order to get Rhode Island back on the right track, we need to address our spending, how it's grown wildly from $9.9 billion to $14 billion over the last 5 years. With a projected $330 million structural deficit, desperate times call for bold action. I'm calling on the governor's administration to thoroughly evaluate each department's budget and identify areas where spending can be reduced, aiming for significant cuts where feasible. While I understand that not every department can manage a 10% reduction, we must prioritize cutting waste and inefficiencies across the board. Just as families must reassess their budgets and make tough choices, our state government must do the same. If we fail to act now, this deficit could grow to $680 million per year by 2030. And for a state our size, that level of overspending is simply unacceptable. Our state budget is bloated, and it needs to be put on a diet. But this fiscal diet will bring about a healthier, more efficient, and stronger state government. Getting Rhode Island's fiscal house in order can mean job creation and enhanced economic competitiveness. Companies like to locate and expand in states that have good schools, make the most productive and innovative use of their resources, provide a competitive tax environment, and most critically, have a stable fiscal environment. The honest state of our state is bleak, but our state motto is hope. And I hope that our governor and state leaders will see that Rhode Island is at a critical crossroads to determine the overall health of our state for decades to come. My hope is that they will make the right decision and that we are patient through the tough road ahead. I'd like to conclude my comments tonight by remembering Jimmy Carter. While I don't agree with his policies, President Carter showed us all how to lead a life of public service while giving thanks to a caring and almighty God. May his example inspire us to give back to our own communities in ways big and small. Thank you. May God bless you. May God bless Rhode Island and the United States of America.
And there you have it. And she went over a lot of good things, or a lot of concerning things that have been going on in Rhode Island, budget-wise, housing-wise, all that stuff. And she ended up mentioning the assault weapons ban being included in the Rhode Island economic bill budget plan, where it doesn't belong. It's their sneaky way of trying to get it in there so that it could be passed by this, so it could be passed, and then it's passed through a legislation bill has nothing to do with it, just to sneak it in. So, I mean, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we got going on in Rhode Island, and not only just Rhode Island, but you know, across the nation, across America. These are the things that are going on, and because they desperately want to get the firearms out of the hands of law-abiding citizens. And it's got to make you wonder: is it really all about just these unaliving events, these mass unaliving events? Is it really just about that? Because what happens when it doesn't stop, like Australia or Canada or the UK or South America or Africa or China? What happens when these types of bans are put on law-abiding citizens and those types of unaliving events don't stop? What happens then? What do they do then? How do you combat that? What's your answer to that then? Do you keep furthering the ability to ban certain items, certain things, so that it furthers that ideology of, like, if we just keep continuing banning all the things and until there's nothing else left to ban, it'll resolve the issue of this types of violence? And listen, it just doesn't make sense, and it's not going to stop. The only way that it does stop it is that you free the ability, or you stop infringing the ability of law-abiding citizens with the ability to defend themselves in the proper manner that they should be under the guise of the Constitution that is within the Second Amendment. And you will not allow, you just don't try to oppress that part of the supreme law of the land. Because I believe, and I do think the evidence shows, that a polite society is an armed society. Texas is a perfect example. Florida is a perfect example. Now, there are events that do occur where there are people that are in these areas that end up doing these so-called unaliving events, but it's not as successful, and it's not as often in these places, as opposed to places like Chicago, places like L.A. or Rhode Island or Boston. All of these other areas, they're significantly more affected by so-called gun violence, because the citizens there, the law-abiding citizens there, are a lot more oppressed on the ability to be to have the ability to protect themselves under the guise of the constitutional law of the Second Amendment. And that's where we are. I know that there's more topics that I hadn't gotten to yet, and I don't think I'll be able to get to all of them, but I do want to talk about very briefly on child trafficking, because and I know I'm jumping from one extreme to another, but the child trafficking issues that have been going on, especially from the border, there's also some talk that this might be going on, and there's evidence of it, that it's going on through CPS DCYF, and that they allegedly are linked to why there is child trafficking, that they may be a part of it. Now, they're not the only ones, because I do think that there are significant other organizations that are involved, cartel organizations, certain gang organizations, terror cell organizations, mostly cartel and gang affiliated organizations, but not even them. I would even say that that's lower level. Even CPS and DCYF is lower level, although that's much closer to the involvement of very high order people, such as state legislators, people who are practicing in lawmakers, which we were just talking about, lawmakers, those types of people, Hollywood, obviously, the music industry, and so on and so forth. You got the whole P. Diddy thing going down, and there's various information about that. I don't know how solid some of the story is, but we're still waiting. I think there is something there. You got the Epstein stuff, Kash Patel, FBI director. The new FBI director under the Trump administration is saying that he's going to release is going to release the so-called Epstein files. We'll wait and see. Hopefully that does come out. I would be surprised if it does come out, like in full detail, explaining and detailing the people who are involved in these child sex pedophilia. Have to say that word carefully on here because it always gets banned. But if you're on Rumble, go to Rumble. Go to Rumble right now. Sometimes I gotta make a break here and try and update people that go to Rumble. Rumble is a free speech platform so far. All of this stuff also gets uploaded later on the Spotify, and Spotify's somewhat been a free speech platform. YouTube definitely isn't yet. Facebook definitely isn't yet, although I'm still on here. So far, so good. But go to those platforms, rumble.com/the true perspective, the TRU perspective, rumble.com, the true perspective, the TRU perspective. And this the TRU perspective, the true perspective on all major platforms worldwide: Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. But child trafficking doesn't just end or begin at CPS or DCYF. But there's been a lot of posting about that over the years, and even Rhode Island also has had cases of this where there's been children that have gone missing and out of DCYF. And no follow-up information. There's an individual, I won't say her name yet. There's an individual who had it's part of a forum, one of those I guess group forums where people can post things on people who have committed sexual assault crimes and all that stuff. To make people aware of who's who in the state that they live in and so on. But there was an individual that contacted me that said, from my understanding, that they were involved in some form of trafficking. And I was able to converse with this individual, and I want to get that's hopefully going to be a podcast very soon, because I would like to get that person's story out there and to explain about firsthand firsthand witness on what's been going on, and I believe that it has something to do with DCYF as well. So stay tuned for that. I'm gonna keep the name private for now, but that is a subject matter that the True Perspective wants to get more in depth of, because I think that's very much an important issue. All of these issues that come up on here are very important. The Second Amendment is important. It's just that there's so many things. It's hard to compile all of it all together in a short amount of time. But as you know, I do try to make these shows. I've had pretty long shows on here, which are good. So there's that, and there's also some subject matter about, that's right, about Trump. Now, I don't know the legitimacy behind, the statement on even if it's possible, but there's talk about him buying or intervening somehow militarily at the Gaza Strip, that if Hamas does not release the Israeli hostages and all that stuff, and there's been a lot of video floating around on both sides of all that. It's a complicated conflict, I think. One side says, the Palestinians are being consistently oppressed and murdered. On the other side, the Israelis are saying that they're constantly being attacked, and this one being the biggest because of how Hamas had entered in through the border by parasailing and other means, and pretty much going on unaliving events throughout the country, at least near more near the border. It's a complicated conflict, and I don't know the right or wrong answer on that. What I would say is that none of this war should be going on. I don't believe in war. I don't. It's never for a cause. And I'm not just speaking specifically to the conflict in Israel and Gaza. It's never for, I'm just saying in general, war is never for a cause to eliminate an enemy that is trying to dominate the world. Because all of these countries are under the subject matter of multi-billion, trillionaire organizations that are trying to figure out how to control the masses on the planet in every country. That's why you have that's why we have more legislation, more executive orders down from the Trump administration to create this American Union. The American Union was something that was talked about many times during the Bush administration, towards the end of the Bush administration, and then during the Obama administration. Some of that was being, rumored, I guess. And there were some legislations that were put forth between Mexico, Canada, and America, where it would create a closer proximity to where this so-called American Union would develop or would become developed. And it looks like there's a shift now that the Trump administration is coming in, that's possibly what's going to occur. Because you have the American Union, you have Africa Command, and then you have America, which I think would consist of because he's saying that he wants to buy Greenland or something like that. Now, everyone thinks that it's just outlandish things to say, but I do think there's some legitimate legislation that might be actually behind this. And I do think that there's some type of globalist agenda behind this. I find Trump to be a globalist. I think he's a globalist. I think he's a part of it. Whether he's aware of it right now or not, I'm not sure. But I do think, and I most certainly think that Elon is also a globalist. I think these are different arms of the globalist regime, but part of the same systematic ideology. And I do think that you could say, and I do think this, I think that some of these things like saying oh, we're going to release the Epstein list. We're going to get down to the bottom of all of the corruption and the spending. We're going to get down to releasing the JFK files, the MLK files, the RFK files, the Malcolm X files. I think, and the the UFO, UAP stuff being kind of like a conglomerate package of information that to be released to the public. And I find it to be that because it's so ingrained to the truther movements, is that it's almost like a smokescreen to hide what's actually going on behind the scenes. Because we have to remember, Elon Musk is a part of SpaceX. He works for NASA. He doesn't work with. Well, he works with, but he's funded by NASA. He's also he's also the creator of Neuralink, and also he's involved with AI. And you see him in other interviews. He says that he's highly concerned about AI. So either he's just being the only few that are expressing the concern to be aware that AI could be a dangerous thing if it's not, if it's not controlled properly. or, you know, he's saying this. Shout outs to Angelo and everybody else that are tuned into the True Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. Shout outs to everybody, Craig, Adelaida, Ashley, Angelo, everybody else that's over on Rumble. I appreciate y'all for being tuned in. I really do. I love y'all. But again, going back to Elon, he's a part of all these things. He's a part of you know, this AI augmented reality, or not augmented reality rather, but I'm sure that's what Neuralink would push for somewhere down the line, but augmentation, machine augmentation to the body, and also artificial intelligence being a part of that, quantum computing and quantum mechanics being a part of that machine. And then you have all of these other things that are heavily involved with the elitist technocratic globalist agenda. This is all out of some of these guys' books, like Klaus Schwab. If you I think if you read, I think it's called the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I think that's what it's called. Let me look that up. I just want to make sure that I get the book right because I own it. And I got to finish reading it too. Klaus Schwab. Sorry, guys. Book. It's called The Fourth Industrial Revolution by Klaus Schwab. And that explains a lot of the technocratic new age artificial intelligence machine augmentation to the biologic of the human body. And Elon Musk has a hand in some of this stuff, perhaps not directly with the World Economic Forum of Klaus Schwab or Bill Gates, because he calls Bill Gates out a lot, but he is an arm to that technology that can be implemented into these ideologies. Now, I don't know if for sure that he would be a part of that ideology, because he does seem to differ very much so from Bill Gates, from Fauci, from Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, from the Klaus Schwab types, from the WEF types. I mean, he has called out quite a bit of these things, and now I don't know if that's a ploy or a smokescreen of his own to kind of hide his identity within that. I don't know. So the best thing to do is to use discernment at all times, to be aware that is to not trust these people, but to use discernment. So if they are saying truth, you can't say, because I have a friend who says who says that RFK somehow is involved with Epstein, and I disagree, because I think there's just not enough evidence of that. And the evidence that he uses, and RFK has been open about it publicly, was that RFK Jr., took, I think, a flight twice on an Epstein plane, not to the island, but on an Epstein plane with his family, and had to go from one area of the country to the other within the U.S. Didn't go overseas and didn't go to any island. Now, it's possible that sometimes, even at that level, you don't know the entirety of someone's background. And it could be that Epstein was trying to get that involvement so that later on could probably coerce some type of corruption out of RFK. It doesn't seem the evidence is there to do that. I have a friend, Fake Mike Real News, Will Turbot, good friend of mine. We've had numerous conversations on here, numerous podcasts together on here. I've been on his show, he's been on mine. And he has his opinion about certain things, but I just don't see the evidence of where RFK is that. Do I trust RFK entirely? Do I agree with all of his policies? No, not at all. He does have a track record of going against things like Monsanto, GMOs, child trafficking. He brings all of these types of hard issues to light. He does have policies that I don't agree with. Like he has firearm policies that I don't agree with. However, he's not the president, and he's not going about making any laws. His energy is actually directed at some of these chemicals and cancer-causing chemicals, and the vaccines. He's bringing all of that to light. Again, use discernment, because there are a lot of things in depth that we have to take a look at on what these people are trying to do. Even Trump, I don't know if I can. There's so many shady things about the background of Trump. I'm still trying to connect dots on most of it. There are some things that are so connected that I can't ignore. And I'm going to be doing a podcast about that in the future. Some of the number one things, though, is that he has not come out and said anything about the effectiveness of warp speed, and that it could have been a mistake. On our end, it's definitely a mistake that was even created, because COVID has come out to be, all the information is being blown out like, oh yeah, COVID did come from a lab because it was created. Fauci was already talking about that. He was already been found funding COVID labs somewhere in Wuhan, and he was behind it. RFK, by the way, wrote a book about the real Anthony Fauci. That's the book. That's the name of the book, The Real Anthony Fauci. RFK had already wrote a book about Fauci, and RFK has not even been summoned or subpoenaed for any type of lawsuit. So that's telling, because that just says that if all that information were to be brought up in the court of law, and they were to accuse RFK for, defamation, whatever, that RFK would have the ability to bring that information to a court of law in order to represent against the case, that if in the event that Dr. Anthony Fauci were to, file a lawsuit. So, and you can go into the background of Anthony Fauci too. He was behind the AIDS pandemic, you could say, out of Africa, and Bill Gates was a part of this too, to some capacity, where they were injecting children with this medication, supposedly to get rid of HIV, AIDS, but it was actually killing them, the medication itself. So they had the virus, but the actual medication was what was actually killing them. So we're dealing with gross, disgusting, I don't even like to call them humans, because they're so anti-human. Everything that they do is anti-human. Everything they do is anti-creation. 100% anti-creation. These Klaus Schwab types, these Bill Gates types, these Fauci types, the Rockefeller types, the Rothschild types, all these multi-billionaire, BlackRock, Vanguard, all of these globalist types are completely anti-human. I do think there is some resistance to it close to those levels. The amount of control is subject to be determined. I know the people on the ground, people like you and I, we certainly resist these things, and we do so in a fashion that it almost changes legislation, and which it has. I mean, COVID was successful to some degree on their end, but also it failed. It failed entirely because they tried to implement these types of almost like you had to prove if you were vaccinated to go into like restaurants or, to work or whatever. And some people were affected by that. I have friends that were affected by that. And I know people that have lost family members for having to take the vaccine, because as soon as they had taken the vaccine, heart attacks, blood clots, death, all that stuff. So, and it's been happening to young children, to infants, to babies. I think Canada, during the height of COVID and during the height of when the vaccine was actually being put out, when mothers were taking the vaccine, there was an 80% increase in infant death. Actually, not even just infant death. There was an 80% increase in miscarriages. So the level of evil that we are up against is monstrous. It's I don't know if anything like this could be forgiven. God would have to be God to find a reason to forgive anything like this. But again, forgiveness is only obtained by seeking it. And that means you have to acknowledge God, you have to acknowledge Christ, you have to acknowledge the ways, you have to acknowledge those types of atrocities. But and then some people would say, shout outs to Will Turbot, Fake Mike Real News. He's told me, maybe I'm paraphrasing in a way or misquoting, but we'll just say that I think that there were some things that he had said to me in the past where it's like, why would what kind of God would allow any of this to occur? And it's a good question. My answer to this all the time is that this is all man's doing. This is all human beings doing. Whether it's anti-human or not, it's still human beings either doing it and then also human beings allowing it. Because God can intervene at any time, and he has already. That's the issue that people forget. That many people forget is that he already has, and he continuously does. But in the aspect of all of this, is that it's human beings allowing this to happen and doing this and making this happen. I do not believe for 1 second that if there is no justice made here on earth for it, there is no escaping from justice on the other side of this reality. Because I do believe that this is just the reality that we live in, and there's another reality that eventually we go to. And I don't believe for 1 second that there is no justice beyond that point, because the level of evil that we face as nations, as a people, as a society it's anti-human for sure. It's anti-human. Sometimes I think that I don't even believe that there's real human beings behind some of these types of things, because it's just there's no way I could see it as that being human nature to the level. I'm talking about to the level of evil. I'm talking about you're trafficking children and they go missing forever because they're stuck in this organization or these, I don't know if they're keeping them underground or something. I've read things. I've looked at video documentaries or supposedly people who have discovered certain things where that's a possibility. I'm sure it's a possibility. I don't leave anything out of the scope of the imagination. I do think that there's some realism to that. It's probably that the wars that begin, everything that happens that has everything that is anti-human or anti-creation rather. I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but it's most certainly influenced by an entity that is anti-human, 100%. You can't convince me any otherwise. And in fact, if you look into the Word, if you read the Word, and you look at Scripture, and then you compare that to history, and you compare that to the events, and you compare that to modern times of today, there has to be. You could see that there's an entity of love, discernment, truth, and you can see that there's an entity of hate, evil, and deception. And these are the two conflicts right here, and we're in the middle of it. We're in the middle of that. And there's a lot that leans towards that hate, evil, deception. But there are a lot that do lean towards love, truth, and goodness, and discernment. Yeah, I know. A lot of topics. I know we discussed a lot about Rhode Island earlier in this podcast about the Second Amendment. It's definitely issues. I mean, it all combines to this evil conglomerate of globalism. They want you disarmed. They want you to be deceived. They want you to be obedient. They want you to be compliant, and they want to criminalize you for not actually being a criminal at all. So this is where we are, and yeah, wild times. I appreciate everybody for tuning in to The True Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble worldwide. The shows, it looks like they're going to be on every Monday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I think that's the best day to do it. Possibly on Sundays for like special shows and events. Not all the time will it be just me showing stuff. I do have some interviews coming up. And I'll announce that. Just keep aware of the event page on Facebook, facebook.com/The True Perspective, the TRU Perspective. And then it's The True Perspective across all major platforms. The TRU Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. And you can see me on TikTok, True_Warface. I'm going to be going live on there a lot more often. I'm trying to link that with another platform. With another it's similar to OBS, but a little bit better, because I can able to distribute the stream towards, I think, Instagram and TikTok and X, formerly known as Twitter, because I'm trying to make the reach a lot more powerful, a lot more wide. But I need you to like, share, subscribe it. So I appreciate you for tuning in. So like, share, subscribe on The True Perspective on Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Rumble. And yeah, I mean, Rumble is probably the most important link that you could go to, because it definitely never censors or takes off any of the episodes or mutes it in other countries. For whatever reason, Facebook and YouTube mutes it sometimes in other countries, which is ridiculous. But this is the uphill battle, ladies and gentlemen. You know what I'm saying? It's good versus evil all the time. It's a war every day. And like I said on every intro and every podcast, if you're receiving this transmission, you are the resistance. I love y'all. Thank y'all. Appreciate y'all. God bless. Be safe out there. Appreciate y'all. Love you. If you are receiving this transmission, you are the resistance.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
This is a struggle for the survival.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
And this will be our last chance to say it.
I'm trying to free your mind. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. At last.
No judge in U.S. history has ever told somebody what they can and can't say.
The whole purpose of the First Amendment is to keep the government the hell out of the business of speech.
Many of us had to be brought to the brink. A lot of us here have called me
I can only show you the door.
to awaken others.
You're the one that has to walk through it.
Spreading a message.
Something's happening, right?
The world is changing every day.
Civilization is weird.
Time is coming. The train can't be stopped.